right. All right, Denise, I bet you have a fan on.
No, I don't. I'm trying to.
Oh, find things?
No, I don't have any. I have nothing going on here.
Okay. Well, somebody has white noise in the background, so we may have to mute periodically unless I'm the only one who's hearing that.
I hear it too, Pamela.
Okay.
I hear it as well.
All right. From the beginning. So your handout says February 2017. Oops. You know, all of you who work in the world with PowerPoint know about cut and paste and the fact that when you repurpose things, sometimes you don't pay attention to everything. So, all right, Denise, you want to put yourself on mute? Thank you. So we're still on that fabulous topic of more about creating reality. Does everybody have their book? Because we'll be talking about the book. All right, I love to use, I was actually going to put up another quote and I forgot what it was, so I left my kind of all-time favorite. We are human beings having a spiritual experience. No, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're human beings having a, somebody else read it. I'm really, okay, we got what it is. We'll just read the text. I've worked with a client all day. I'm a little, yeah. So some of the key things we're going to look at tonight are exploring the reality I've created, exploring the beliefs I hold about reality. So I think we're on beliefs exercise number 4, visiting myself in time and accessing more of my abilities. So that's the topic. And once again, just to always land our discussion in the right place is we are definitely still working on building that lower body to be able to, I was just listening to Marion Woodman yesterday and today. She's my favorite Jungian teacher. I had her as a personal teacher and it was wonderful. And she was just talking about, again, we have to build a strong enough container to hold the descent of spirit. You know, spirit that wants to fill us, spirit that we, you know, request to fill us. We have to have a container. And she's talking about various life transition stages. I'm reading it because it's this particular talk is called The Crown of Age. And Marion Woodman is 12 years older than I am, so she's 82. And she has been a very significant mentor. And I was just feeling the need to have an older, wiser woman talk to me as I'm trying to see what comes next. And so today I heard her talk loud and clear about how we have to build this lower container of our personality, our physical, emotional, and lower mind. So that's always the focus of what we're doing, and we just want to be able to bring the light down. We want to be able to hold as much light as we can, as much spirit as we can. So I'm going to talk about Susan Pierce Thompson. Everybody, I think, on the show on the show tonight. Yeah, I'm on TV, on Zoom tonight. I worked with a client all day. Please forgive me. And they all know what a character I am, and that's good because I have a lot of freedom. So I don't know if any of you saw the vlog that she did on this, but it really caught my attention. It's called A Moment of Clarity. And she opens by telling the story of what happened to her when she was in a crack house at the age of, you know, I think 17, 18. And she had a moment of clarity where she realized that if she didn't walk out of that house right then, that was probably going to be what her life was. That there was that window where the divine opened up and she got to have a message that said, honey, you want a different life, you're going to have to do something different. And so, and she also talks about ones that have happened since then. She actually created this whole Bright Line program that she's bringing to the world as a result of something that came to her in meditation. So she's a daily meditator, and one time she just really got the strong push to bring this into the world. Now it's based on a 12-step program that I was in for a lot of years and she was in for a lot of years, but those programs often don't reach mainstream. So she made a commitment to take all the cognitive science that she knows and, you know, her academic background, apply it with what she learned in 12-step recovery and bring it to the world. So I'd encourage you to go to brightlineeating.com and read this, listen to this vlog if you haven't, because this is my understanding of what we're supposed to be watching for, is these moments of clarity that show up and how important it is to capture them and act on them. So, thoughts? Anybody got any thoughts about that? Anybody had their own moment of clarity? Oh, stop it. You have to. All right, nobody's sharing. We'll go on to the next one. So the other wild thing that I have learned about, and it actually is tied to Susan Pierce Thompson, on one of her vlogs, and Lisa, this will come, it's actually a module. She hasn't done it yet. It's in week 2 or 3. The last thing she talks about is whoop. And what whoop is. And so it was a Sunday, and the modules had just come out, and I listened to them all, and I went on a search to see what whoop is, WOOP. And it's interesting because it adds structure to the whole process of visualization. So I'd encourage you to Google it. I'd encourage you to listen to Brian Johnson's version of it. Ettinger is the actual author of the research. The research was so flew in the face of contemporary understanding about visualization and affirmation that she couldn't get it published for 20 years. And so it's out now. They have a great site. So if you just Google WHOOP, there's a charactersomething.org that has a lot of WHOOP resources. But it's an acronym for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. So the research actually indicates that if you sit on your couch visualizing your fabulous new dream home and your wonderful new Maserati and your great looking boyfriend and whatever it is you're visualizing, if you're sitting on your couch doing that and your blood pressure drops, what do you think is actually likely to happen? Anybody? Lisa, what do you think?
I think that it's gonna, you're gonna make it happen.
Actually, if your blood pressure drops, you don't get off the couch.
Oh.
No, that's what they find. Actually, to make things happen, you have to have your blood pressure go up. You have to be energized into action. So what she's saying is there's a thin line between regressive dropping into passivity and the practice that many of us have been taught around visualization, which is to then go from W stands for wish. So coming up with what your wish is, and I'm working on this right now. I'm trying to put together something for my 7th decade, what the next 10 years are going to look like. O is for outcome. So now you really want to define the outcome. What are all the ways that I want this to look, dimensionality of it. The third one is obstacle. And you have to identify what is your inner obstacle, not your outer obstacle. And then the fourth one is plan. And it's an if-then plan. So I'll give you a simple example from what I'm doing this week. And so I've been getting a lot from Brian Johnson, this Habits 101. Lisa told me about it. She was watching it. I watched it. I signed up for his Optimize.me, $10 a month. It's totally worth it. And so one of the habits that were recommended were bookending your day with a rising time and a sleeping time that give you your best time. So, my best time is morning. I am a morning person, and I have nothing left when I come home from a client. I'm really pretty useless after 6 p.m. So what I'm doing is rearranging my life. So I get up at 4, and then I'm committing to be in bed by 9 p.m. So that's part of what I'm doing in the WO. Well, the obstacle is I have a willful child in me, and Denise and I have talked about this, that when I get home from work at 8 o'clock, after I've been working from clients since 8 o'clock in the morning, I've driven a lot and I'm coming home, this willful child wants to watch TV. She wants to watch something mindless, something stupid, and she wants to watch TV. Now, she used to want to watch TV and eat junk food, but, we got through one of those. But, on this willpower thing, we're still working on still wanting to watch TV. So I have to have an if-then plan to deal with my own willfulness. So the if-then plan that I had to implement last night, because it happened last night, is if you get home at 8 o'clock, Then you will watch TV another night, because you need to have a digital sunset, another Brian Johnson concept, an hour before you actually try to go to sleep. Because all the serotonin systems, all that stuff doesn't shut down. Plus, I've committed to meditating at night as well as in the morning. So I need that half hour to finish my daily practices, to write in my 5-year journal, to work on my gratitude list, to meditate, and then I can go into sleep. So that's an example of how I'm using Whoop right now. This Habits 101 is also full of great ways to build a life that will sustain manifesting what you want. So I have struggled with building strong, good habits all my life because I am constitutionally willful and I really dislike structure. And so one of the demons I'm wrestling with right now is how important it is for me to have structure in my life if I want to create the life I want to manifest. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I have a thought, but not really about that. That I question the premise that it is actually elevated blood pressure that gets you off the couch. I think it could be, oxygen or something else, but all energized people don't have high blood pressure, so I'm just going to question that.
Okay, I'm going to tell you to Google Whoop and listen to it firsthand because I may not have accurately represented it.
Okay.
I'm more than willing to say I didn't. I haven't read her book yet.
That's okay. Just, it doesn't matter about that, but just, you don't have to have high blood pressure to be energized.
No, it's not actually high blood pressure. It's an increase in blood pressure as an activation.
Oh, gotcha.
But you're right. If somebody has been a meditator for many, many years, they're probably not going to. They probably have enough control over their autonomic system that that's not going to happen. So that would be, the rare case.
And I think the point here is that you get excited.
Right.
Yeah, that it's energized. Somehow it's energized rather than collapsing back into a more passive fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So Optimize.me is Brian Johnson, some great resources. He's pulling from positive psychology. He's pulling from a lot of different fields. I love the way he describes his own life. He said, yeah, I didn't win the genetic lottery. Dad was an alcoholic. His father died of alcoholism. Mom was kind of a mess. So, I didn't start life with the genetic lottery. And here's another concept I got from him. It's actually from Malcolm Gladwell's book on David and Goliath. And he talks about a basketball team, young girls in Silicon Valley. And I think they're like 11, 12, 13. And their coach is Indian. Now, I don't know if anybody knows this. You might know from where you spent most of your youth, Jennifer, is they don't have basketball. It's not a sport that is played in India. So here they have this software engineer dad who is coaching these girls who really are not good at basketball at all. And, they can't pass, they can't shoot, they can't, do anything. But what they came up with as a strategy is they do full court press the entire game. They never stop running their little butts off, and they just push it. And he uses that as a metaphor for what he has to do in life. Because he didn't win the genetic lottery, he has to do full court press. And I thought, that's probably one of the best explanations I've heard for why I have to live the way I have to live is, dealing with what I deal with in my own psyche, I have to use a full court press. Because, people for years have said, why are you so hard on yourself? And I said, I'm not really hard. But, I've got this willful brat that lives inside of me. And if I don't, corral that willful brat, first of all, I'll have a lot of anxiety. And second of all, bad stuff happens. And I have evidence. So, Brian Johnson, who here has taken Values in Action? Okay. It's free. It's viacharacter.org. It's great work in positive psychology. I'm going to tie it into the Seth material because knowing what your strengths are is one of the things that we can use to kind of access what our latencies are, where our latent possibilities are. And it also ties into the framework, kind of the ethical framework or the values framework around it of using the key values of wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and I don't know what the last one is because I can't see it. I should know it. Transcendence. So they have a free one, and then if you want to pay, you can get more of the stuff. And after you take it, it shows you where you plot. But what I really like is looking at the virtues. So wisdom and knowledge, uh, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. So the last time we talked about chapters in this book, we talked about a life worth living. What is kind of my manifesto or my statement for a life worth living. And one of the top phrases in mine was spiritual growth, because one of the key virtues for me is wisdom and knowledge. So as I'm trying to build a life, particularly this life for conscious aging, as I'm using Marianne Woodman's term, is wisdom really is a key. Is what I'm reading about today, or listening to her to talk about today, is the crone. What is the crone? And she said this great thing about the crone has a synonym, hag. Everybody know the phrase hag? It actually comes from Hagia, as in Hagia Sophia. And Sophia is wisdom. Hagia is, the blessed feminine. So it was one of the things that got distorted, just as crone got distorted. Crone really just referred to the crown. It's the same root of the crown, and it's the crown of age. But it became, during the great times of fear around women's witchery and power, it became negatively charged. So, that's one of the things that's important to me as I build this life in conscious aging. And the other one is courage. This is requiring a different kind of courage for me. When I was young, I had feisty courage, and this is a different kind of courage. And the other thing she talks about is the change between using power, as we may have used it when we were younger, to presence as a more quiet form of power. And I'm really discovering that with my clients, and how much more grace there is when I can do that, instead of the chip on my shoulder, gonna prove something to somebody, as I was as a young woman and into my late 40s. So I'm really relaxing into that. And of course, transcendence, that's what we're talking about here, larger universe and greater meaning. Temperance will always be my area of striving. I am not naturally wired for temperance, so that shows up. So this is not really about me, but I wanted you to see what was available. So it breaks down into all these other subcategories. And I really used to have a sense of humor. I don't know what happened. It'll come back. My clients think I'm wicked funny, so, I don't know. But self-regulation, I feel so proud of that, because I have worked on self-regulation so much. I'm the kid who ate the marshmallows. In that research study, I'm the kid who ate the marshmallows. I couldn't wait. And so, yeah, that's good. So
yeah, that one surprised me, but you've worked on it. So
I have really worked on it. The fact, and how I do it is the stuff that Susan Pierce Thompson is talking about, and that Brian Johnson is talking about, is I have had to build discipline. So when people say to me, "You're so disciplined," that's my way of providing self-regulation, because it does not naturally occur. And the other research that I've been diving back into is this whole thing about willpower depletion. And it's been brought back to my mind by Susan Pierce Thompson. What got me in so much trouble with food was willpower depletion. The last time I got up to 200 pounds was at a time that I was in a difficult relationship. My husband got very sick. Well, actually, he was only my boyfriend, and then I thought we ought to get married when he got so sick. So he had quintuple bypass and esophageal cancer. I had come home from a business trip and found another woman's lipsticks in my bathroom. And that weekend, we went to the emergency room because he had shoulder pain, and I just thought he'd gone and screwed up his shoulder again, because he was a physical guy, and he'd had a heart attack. And, then within 12 hours of the heart attack, they found out he had esophageal cancer. And then they thought they were going to be able to do a stent, and they found out, in fact, he was not a candidate for a stent. He needed a quintuple bypass. Now, here's a guy that I was going to throw out. The day we went to the hospital, I was going to throw him out. And now I've got this happening. So because of my values, you know, and a few other things, we went through it. It did not, we got to the other side and he lived, and that was very important. And as far as I know, he's still alive today. But the relationship did not survive. And I was working on a numb project with Toyota, and it got less and less meaningful and more burdensome. So I just gained 70 pounds because I did not have enough. I was ego depleted from trying to handle so many things and manage my emotions and not blow up with clients and blow up at home. And I used food to regulate. So that's what I know about my life and the need for self-regulation. Other thoughts? Still, if I'm driving home, if I don't have this food plan in place, when I'm driving home from a day like yesterday, you know, there is a stop on the Mass Pike where I know exactly what's available to me in that fast food hangout place. And, you know, I'm tired. I've already given, I'm Mother Hubbard. I've emptied my cupboard serving clients, and it's calling to me. So we do not pull in. So I thought this was an interesting map. I hadn't seen this before in the value strengths, but it ties into a lot of things we've been talking about. Is when you know what your character strengths are, you can also see where you fall on this, you know, kind of head-heart map, and interpersonal versus intrapersonal. We have something very similar in the astrological chart. So where your planets are in your astrological chart talk about these 4 dimensions. I love the way things all come together. So the kind of maroon colored dots are my top ones, and it matches the things in my astrological chart, my numerological chart.
I don't think I'm looking at the right screen.
It's a big round circle with some axes.
No. I'm looking at a bar chart.
Oh, keep going. You must be on lag, because are you looking at your own handouts or my screen?
Your screen.
I see the circle.
I see the circle.
You must have a lag. Maybe yours froze, Denise.
Okay,
You're
what do I
moving.
do?
Your face is moving.
Any suggestions?
Are you showing me yours, Denise? Jennifer? Oh yeah, you've got okay, you're looking at the handout? Yeah. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, okay.
You actually can't make it forward, so it'll pop up. You've just got a lag for some reason on yours.
All right.
Yeah, I just underlined all mine
Okay.
to know where they show up.
All right. And where do
Mostly
I-
part intrapersonal.
I'm not surprised.
Oh, really? I was.
Well, that's that thing, you know, that I don't always know. Remember I said there's 2 Jennifers that I experience?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's one of the Jennifers I experience, you know, the interpersonal and the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, there's a whole part of you that's kind of that intelligent stuff we talk about.
Right, and that's where I thought I'd show up mostly, but only a few. Honesty, perseverance, perspective in
Yeah.
my top 10.
Okay. So, you know, mine show how deeply introverted I really am, because mine are at the bottom. Love of learning, creativity, curiosity is up there, but not in the top. This is the top 6, I think. Spirituality, they have in the heart dimensions, almost in the center, and then self-regulation, as I say, and honesty. So working hard for the self-regulation. So I would encourage you to do it if you haven't done it. It's free, viacharacter.org. And they have it's a research database, and great. All right, so I always bring you the stuff that's been part of my practice for the month. And this is another body of work, huge body of work. It's all on the internet. It's from Sweden, and all the original works are in Swedish. I do not read Swedish, so, you know, yeah, I'm going to read it in English. So I have used 2 cartridges of toner printing this out. You know all those binders you were stepping over when you came to the house, Denise? That's what this stuff is. Hundreds of pages of it. It's rich, it's intense. But I like these 7 basic laws of life. And once again, they kind of frame the spiritual experience we're talking about. And it ties in so well with modern positive psychology. So the law of freedom, which is a fabulous law for me, says every being is its own freedom, its own law, and the freedom is gained through law. Freedom is the right to individual character and activity within the limits set by the equal rights of law. So this is a both and. I get my freedom not at the expense of yours, but with the inclusion of that. The law of unity says that all beings make up a unity, and every being must realize its unity with all life in order to be able to expand its consciousness with its own self. So this is part of the unity and diversity principles that some people want to split apart and have either unity or diversity, but it's actually meant to be combined. The law of development says that all life from the lowest to highest develops, that forces act in certain ways towards certain goals, which ultimately lead up to the cosmic final goal. Every primordial atom is a potential God and will at some time through the process of manifestation become an actual God, that is, reach the highest degree of cosmic consciousness and power. So we're on this evolutionary spiral, and that's what we're really always about, is this task of moving forward in our conscious development. I've been dipping back into Ken Wilber because he does, Jennifer, I think you know spiral dynamics. It's that whole, and what I love about it is we all start at the same place in every life. We're born into infancy and we have to mature through adulthood. And some people can get chronologically very old without actually having completed the maturational steps. So it's a driving process. And it's interesting what Wilber has been talking about in the last 10 years is he calls it growing up, which is the development stuff we're talking about in the law of development. Then he talks about waking up, which is really spiritual practice. So the levels of awakening you have. Then he talks about cleaning up, and that's doing your shadow work and cleaning up the stuff that gets in the way, the messy stuff. Done a ton of that in my life. And then the fourth one is showing up. And I talked about that, in the beginning, probably about a year ago right now. And I just think it's a great model for the work that we're doing. Somebody want to say something?
I just wanted to say for this one, I think it's enlightenment in Buddhist terms.
Right.
Yeah.
Moving through that. And he uses, the book that he's just written is actually, the subtitle, it is The Fourth Turning of Buddhism. So it's around a Buddhist practice. It's, 600 pages. It's another Ken Wilber tome. But he is really wanting to talk about integral spirituality. And that we have to simultaneously work both on our spiritual enlightenment and our conscious development of the personality. And he talks about how there are some gurus who, while they may have been very enlightened, their psychosocial ego development was not. And that many of them lived in cultures where they were protected from that. And this is the stuff, the scandals that came with the gurus, Nityananda being one of them, Adida being another one. So they were living in a different world. Even Rinpoche, there's a lot, according to people who knew him closely in Boulder, he was alcoholic. So one can be enlightened and still have parts of them that have not grown. So what Ken is proposing, that in the modern world, what we need to do is grow up with our psychosocial development. And then, Denise, I'm going to need you to mute. You got background noise, please. Psychosocial development is one path. Realization or enlightenment is another path. These aren't mutually exclusive. They're all one thing. And then cleaning up whatever we have to clean up in terms of our shadow, and then showing up is the work of service in the world.
What was the second one? It's growing up.
Growing up, waking up.
Waking up.
So that's the meditative path, the spiritual practice path.
Got it.
So the law of self or self-realization says that every being by itself, by its own knowledge, own work, must acquire all the qualities and abilities that will ultimately lead up to cosmic omniscience and omnipotence. So that's that second path. It's kind of a combination of the growing up and waking up. The law of destiny says that the self in every new life form is influenced by forces and put into situations that afford the self the experiences necessary on that very level in evolution. This is exactly what Seth says. In the workbook we're working with, this is exactly the same thing. It's all purposeful. It has all been designed by whatever language you want to use, the soul or the cosmic self, in advance and for all these multiple lives to fulfill the law of destiny. The law of reaping, as you reap, so shall you sow. Everything we've sown, we shall sometime reap. In esoteric Buddhism, there is a very elaborate explanation of this and how all the sowing, samskara, is kept in this body. It's a vijnana something. I don't say the words out loud when I read, so I don't know how to say them when I get here. But that actually lifetime after lifetime leaves us with a residue of whatever we have sown in order to be reaped. And when a life is particularly hard, sometimes it's understood to be a life where we're doing quite a bit of reaping or cleaning up. You know, I'm beginning to think that this was a life that I chose to clean up a lot of stuff. So, you know, and this is the whole mindfulness about Buddha's, you know, right action, all of the 8 ways to not create more to reap. So if we have right conduct, then we won't create more to reap. The law of activation says that, this is kind of complex, that the individual's consciousness develops through activity and only through his own activity. Everything must be his own experience and his own working up of this experience in order to be understanding and ability. That's kind of it in the mundane world. But it actually says we are the activators of higher consciousness, and we actually draw it down. Through our wish and desire and attention, we draw that down. So we are activating the higher consciousness to come into our life.
Yeah, this to me is, it has to be personal.
It has to be personal.
To put it simply, yeah.
Yep. It is not something that is done for one time, you know, by that. So I just thought I'd throw those in. What do you think about those laws of success? It's only 1 page out of, I'm making it part of my morning practice, just to remind them. And then he has some other readings that I'll weave in over the months about, he calls them long thoughts. And I guess this comes from a philosopher, but I'm not sure which philosopher it is. It might be Kant. That a long thought is actually, he said, mostly what we think are short thoughts, but a long thought is a thought that actually holds a whole system in the thought. So it would be like a long prayer that you did. I'm thinking about a prayer like the Apostles' Creed. Anybody know the Apostles' Creed? Okay, it's kind of a statement of faith. Mm-hmm. And it's a statement of, you know, who God is and what God is and, you know, what we believe and all of that. So that would be a long thought.
Or Nicene Creed would be even longer.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, PK. Thank you.
One comment on the law of freedom. I was thinking it says when you operate within the law, you find more freedom even. And the only way I could understand that, Pamela, is thinking of boundaries. Yeah. So that when I create boundaries, then I know I have freedom to move within those.
My favorite phrase is,
I hate boundaries and I'm bad at them and I'm trying to work on having them.
Okay, so you and I are working on very similar stuff. And the phrase I love to use with that is a piece of research I learned, that children play better, you know, more freely in a fenced yard.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, and I really, since I've gone to this food plan again with the discipline that I had, you know, maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago, I am finding freedom from anxiety. I'm really surprised that just by documenting my food and weighing and measuring and sticking to a food plan, that anxiety in other areas is diminished. Because basically the fundamental structure, and you know, this thing about getting up at the right time, going to sleep at the right time, my life feels more under control. And you're right, I have more freedom. You know, I feel more playful because all those edges, I'm not teetering on the edges.
And not to beat the Marie Kondo to death.
Yes.
But I feel that because my house is all in order.
So explain to Denise what you did, because I don't think she knows.
I'm sorry?
Explain the simplify thing you did.
Oh, okay. Well, Jennifer already knows. So the Marie Kondo, Denise, have you heard of that? The magic of tidying. And so
I think I like it. Yeah. Yeah. You have heard of it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically the magic of tidying is going through your house and holding every single solitary thing that you own and saying, does this spark joy? And if it doesn't, get it out. And so we've thrown away now about 12 trash bags full of stuff. So I went through clothes, then books, then papers, and now we're kind of going through the rest of the house. You know, the basement is going to be the nightmare, so we're not there yet. But just, you know, going into each room afterwards, it's just the different feeling that's there. There's a different energy that's going on. And it just, everything has its place. So whenever I like pick up my wallet or, you know, the purse that I'm going to use or whatever, whenever I go out, when I get home, I need to put them back. And everything is in its place. And everything has one place in the house. And this is these bright lines, if you will, like between like measuring the food and this is the food that I'm going to have. This is where everything actually goes. I have so much more time because I'm not looking for stuff. I'm not cleaning. There's no need to clean because it's already all tidy. It's so cool.
That is wonderful, Lisa. Thank you for sharing that. Denise, I'm just going to tell them what you do for a living. Denise is an interior designer.
Nice.
But her own house, go ahead, Denise, and speak.
What? Tell about how my own house is a mess?
No, it is not a mess. It is exactly everything is in place. I mean, order is a lot of what you do, right? And you help.
Sort of, but I certainly could benefit from that exercise. I have a 3-car tandem garage that's filled to the brim with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I can feel the weight of it, so I completely understand that.
Yeah, and so much stuff that we, you know, just toss. It's just so much freedom because you don't have to care for this stuff anymore. And the beautiful part is, you know, you take all your stuff and you put it all in the same place. So it's not by season, it's not, you know, in different rooms in the house, it's all in one spot. And I don't know about you guys, but I take a look at it and I'm just like, holy crap, how many of these do I need? I think I found like 200 pens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't need 200 pens. I just don't need 200 pens. You know, that's just one stupid example of like the stuff. Like I have like 4 white shirts that I'm just like, why do I need 4 white shirts if this is really the same thing? The same thing.
Yeah, I'm about ready to send a lot of stuff to a consignment shop. You know, that it's just, you know, that whole thing about it, does it bring me joy? Have I worn it in a year? No. You know, it just doesn't need to be there. And that's the whole, it's actually scarcity thinking. This is one of the things Catherine Ponder talks about in the law of vacuum. Is, you know, if we want to bring in abundance, we need to create a vacuum. And, you know, when I would find myself not wanting to let go of things and I'd listen to what the voice was saying, it was, well, what if I never get another one of these? And what if I don't ever have enough money to get it if I want it and all that? That is all scarcity thinking. And it, you know, I suppose that's how people become hoarders at some point, is that sense of there's not enough and I better keep this all here.
Yeah.
I totally relate to that.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. It's so hard to get rid of stuff. So hard.
Well, Jennifer's moving. And, you know, one of the things I've done for myself is I have moved, it's either 34 or 35 times in my adult life. And the last time I moved, Allison, here you are. Where did Jennifer go? Oh, she's down below?
I'm still here.
Okay, good.
How do we get everybody there?
I think somebody's knocking at my door. If I don't come back, call the police or something. I'll bring it back. Bye.
Wait, those are song lyrics.
We are song lyrics?
Paul McCartney and Wings.
You're gonna have
Hi, guys. Can I take this moment to just say hi?
You certainly can. Do you see Denise is here too? So
I do. She's so nicely muted, but she's waving.
Yeah. Well, my 2 local pal gals are here on Zoom.
I'm so happy to have landed in the middle of these friendly faces.
Okay. Where are you physically? Are you home?
Yes, and I'm going to completely land in the loving arms of all of you and not say anything and just be here, if that's okay.
Totally okay.
I'm a little fragile, so I'm just going to be.
Okay. All good. I worked with clients today, so I'm a little stupid. So everybody's been really helping out, and we haven't lost anything yet. I can't see. Well, there's Lisa. Can I see everybody? Yes, I can. So we are on chapter 18 in Create Your Own Life. I thought this was a really nice exercise. So, some of us have a tendency to be better at tabulating the less than or not good or didn't finish list. And having an inventory of successes keeps us positively fueled. So this is another teaching. Now, these teachings were done in the 60s, and the field of positive psychology didn't even come about until 1990. But you can really see how this is part of the strengths exercise and how, we help people build on, all the things, what went well, what can you do well. So this is what Seth says, and then the chapter is about the practice. So I don't mean to stress the negative by any means. So I suggest you look to those areas of your life which you're pleased and have done well. See how emotionally and imaginatively you personally reinforce those beliefs and brought them to physical fruition. So, we teach ourselves well from the evidence of our own lives. For me, that's the most meaningful, because I would have a tendency to discount something that you did by saying, well, easy for you. That comes easily to you. So when I can reference my own life and my own successes and say, okay, I did that. Oh, can I break in and tell you a really fabulous thing that goes with that? So there's another bright young man that's doing great things. His name is Hal Elrod, and he has something called the Miracle Morning. And in it, he talks about habit creation. And this is actually, Susan Pierce Thompson got it from this, and now I know this one phrase they use where it came from. He said, a lot of people say it takes 30 days to build a new habit, right? That's about ballpark, 30 days to build a new habit. I got to tell you, a habit like quitting smoking takes a lot longer than 30 days. But let's just say it's a habit that you can build in 30 days. He said, break that down into 3 10s. So 10 days, first 10 days, middle 10 days, third 10 days. So 10, 10, 10. So the first 10 days of a habit, let's say I decided for some crazy reason that I wanted to start running every day. Crazy, insane, probably not going to happen, but let's say I did. How would the first 10 days feel?
Terrible.
Terrible.
But I would be motivated.
Okay, but it's still going to feel pretty terrible. And, particularly the second day, because the first day, my body didn't hurt because I hadn't started running yet. The second day, I've been doing this with squats, so I have some appreciation of this. He said, actually, the first 10 days feel unbearable. If I quit in the first 10 days, what do I teach myself?
How to
First, I teach myself I'm a loser, big L. But anytime in the future that I think about running, what is the emotion that I'm going to have? What is the memory I have? It was unbearable. It was unbearable. It was unbearable. I can't do that. It was unbearable. So he said, you got to hang in for the first 10 days to get the second 10 days. What is our experience of the second 10 days? It's not unbearable anymore. It's just uncomfortable. Hard, uncomfortable. So he says, unbearable, uncomfortable. Second 10 to 20, uncomfortable. If we hang in for those second 10 days, we're up to 20 days now, what are the last 10 days? This is where Susan Pierce Thompson gets this phrase. They are unstoppable. So if we will just hang in, to get to that part of the habit building experience, then we're unstoppable. If we quit any earlier than that, we're actually teaching ourselves something that becomes a truth. So this is kind of what Seth is talking about why we have to capture and mentally rehearse and remember what are our manifestations, where we've been able to do this successfully. So anybody here have one that you think of where you actually worked to create something and you were able to bring it to fruition and make it successful? I don't want to talk about all mine. I want somebody else to. Denise, would you talk about one of yours?
Nothing's coming to mind, actually.
Oh, Denise, I'm going to talk about two things.
Okay.
Bodybuilding
Oh,
and how you got to have this career as an interior designer.
well, that's actually what I thought of when I
That's
read
more
this
recent?
chapter.
Yeah, more recent.
And coming to that point where I said, if money were no object and I could do anything in the world, what would it be? And everything was around creativity and interior design. And I started thinking about how I could learn more about it without having to go back to college, basically. And I did a lot of writing around it. I did a lot of getting excited about it, the potential of it. And on accident, decided to look on Craigslist for a job. I had been out of work for quite a while. And there was a job, an ad for a design consultant for a company who trains their designers soup to nuts. So anyway, long story short, I walked in there in my jeans, no less, and said, "Hey, I'm going to be your next designer." And they said, "Yeah, I think so." I mean, that was encapsulated, but that's basically what happened.
And I'll tell what I was observing, because you and I were in daily conversation during that period of time, is I think you called me right before you went in, and I think you called me right after you went in. It was one of those, okay, talk me in, I'm going in. And, it was totally bold and totally operating on the vision you had. I mean,
And totally out of character.
totally out of character.
Yeah.
And then, just a little of the backstory, you did get the job, but they couldn't put you to work for how long?
Oh, it was almost 2 months.
Almost 2 months. So that whole thing about, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then you had to learn how to live on commission sales.
Yes, that's ongoing.
That's been a 3-year. But what do you still love?
Oh, I love the work more and more and more. I love my clients. I love that aha moment when it all comes together for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So is there anything you'd rather be doing right now than being an interior designer?
No.
Okay. So I think that's a great recent example. Actually everybody that's on this Zoom call is pretty much living it, and working on demonstrating it. But I know that people here also have had past successes. So Lisa, Jennifer, you got any past success that comes to mind that you can use to fuel your current?
Yeah, I have a mini one.
Okay.
So I got together with a former vendor from 2 companies ago, and she wanted to start a very unique networking forum in Washington, D.C. that she and I would co-lead. And this is so out of my realm, because I always say I like to go to parties, not host them. But I agreed to co-host with her in April, and we did it. And then she already set the date for me. So that was unbearable. Because I'm sitting there like, I don't have a job. Why am is this for me? I feel like I should be doing this for others, but I need it, but I'm not in a place. Anyway, we had the next one in May, and it was better.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's announced, and I'm with it. I'm at the Unstoppable nearly. It's going to happen every month this year, and I'm flying back from Florida for it. I'm like,
rock on.
And we pay, so I don't have any income, but we pay coffee. We've said it's coffee or tea. So it's not alcoholic. It's from 4 to
Yep.
5:30. So I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I feel like, well, this is kind of cool now because it's actually something I love doing is linking people and getting them gigs. I mean, I've never done recruiting in my job, and I never will, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But linking people who are neat to other people who have neat things they could learn, I love that.
Okay, great. Lisa, Allison, what have you done in the past that's a success that you can reference as you're moving forward?
Oh gosh. Allison, do you want to go first?
No, thank you, honey. Honestly, I'm in such a
Okay,
fragile state. I'm not positive today.
okay, I won't ask you.
Yeah.
All right, Lisa.
Yeah. So I don't know. Would it be cocky to say the list is long?
No, I would hope that that's how you'd feel about yourself.
Yeah, I just
That's that false humility, that false self-denigration of, oh, I really haven't ever done anything and all that. Yeah, bullshit.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just pick yoga therapy.
Okay.
That I went to a yoga workshop, and it was yoga for chronic back pain. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to my teacher, and I'm sure that he's trying to sell people in the class, and I just like bought off hook, line, and sinker because you can't not love the guy whenever he's talking. He's just so the real deal. And he starts talking about yoga therapy, and I'm like, I want to do that. See people one-on-one for whatever ails them, looking at them holistically. I totally want to do that. And it was just like a no-brainer. So I came home, I filled out the application. I didn't even know like what you needed to do. You had to be like a 500-hour certified teacher before you even got to the yoga therapy. So it was like 4 years, 4 weeks a year for 4 years. And I did it. And then, like when I first went in, let's talk about like, first 10 days or first retreat out of 8, I'm like crying. I'm just like, holy crap. I don't know these things. These other people, they're already yoga teachers. They're just studying with him. I have no idea what to do. And my teacher is up in front, like, can you help her down here? Can you help her? And I'm like, I'm just horrified because the teaching assistant is just like, I'm trying. Like, oh my God, she's pathetic. And then like 4 years later, I'm just like, I am a yoga therapist, and that's that. And I see people one-on-one for whatever ails them. And I went through that whole, unbearable, hard, uncomfortable, unstoppable. It didn't happen in 30 days though.
Yeah. You sound pretty unstoppable now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that story. It's just a great story because it is so much, one of the hardest things for adults to do is to move into new areas because we have to go back to feeling so incompetent. And so that's like me with studio art. Is when I first started taking studio classes, I was the same thing. I'm so pathetic, I just, I took a seed bead class just because I liked my teacher and she was taking it. I wanted to be in the class with her. I couldn't see the effing holes in the beads. I couldn't get the needle through them. I couldn't understand the instructions. And little to my, no, I didn't realize, but I'm in an advanced class. And everybody's just whipping stuff around me and doing triple knots and all this. And I'm just like, I can't even see because my glasses weren't good enough. So since then I got mega optics. But, there's that whole being able to move forward. Am I going to fall back? And many people fall back into life and never get their heart's desire. Never that thing that we talked about grow up, wake up. Clean up and show, they never get to be the full possibility that are talked about in the laws of evolution and destiny is, we are meant to be so much more. But if I let my fear or my self-consciousness, to be an adult, I was in my 50s trying to do this. And, I had a lot of success in academic and intellectual pursuits. But, I hadn't done much with my hands. And there's a well-known artist who I can't think of right now who talks about, Glass. What's his name? Glass, the musician? Well-known I'll think of his first name anyway. He, he said the problem of trying to go into things like that as an adult, particularly art, is you have a mature design taste and you don't have the craft skills to make something that your mature design taste likes. I mean, you know, and I would call it my refrigerator art. I would say to my teacher, thank you for putting my art on your refrigerator, because I realized that, you know, and I've kept it because I need to remember where I came from so that I can use it for just this reason, to use that success to say, and that's why I love the story you told, Lisa, of how hard it was to come in, how hard it was to be, you know, in the beginner's mind, to really have to be inept after, you know, how long had you been a project manager and done all those wonderful other skills you have? You know, so yeah, so you're going into a completely new arena where you can't really transfer what you had.
It's true. It's true. And then I just finished up actually with a client 2 days ago, and he gave me a big hug, and he's like, now I have the tools that I need to really go live my life, and I just need to do this, and I'll call you when I need something else. And I just couldn't ask for more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I was referencing yesterday, I was in a difficult client situation. Some hard things had happened, and this is a place where a lot of hard things keep happening, and people were in a certain amount of pain. And when that first happens, you know I can't fix it, and as a consultant, coach, you know, whatever that I am, it brings up my feeling of powerlessness and helplessness. And so one of the things that I was able to reference, and I just ran across in this great book, Seven Whispers, that I read last year at this time, where she talks about ask for the help you need and give what you can, you know, offer what you can. And I thought that's really what happened yesterday, is I had to quiet myself and not let all that feeling of inadequacy come up and say, well, what can I do? I can listen to them. You know, I can be present. I can witness, you know, without having to take them out of their anger and frustration and fear. And then I can share some things that are similar that I'm dealing with in my life, and just, you know, kind of keep it as an equal conversation about, you know, sometimes stuff is hard. And sometimes we're making choices around, are we going to stay or go based on what's hard? So yeah, being able to use those moments and mine kind of, you know, what it was, extract the gold from it so we can use that gold for the next time we want to do something hard that is so outside our comfort zone and so scary. Because otherwise, and I'm sure you know times in your own life, or if you listen to other people who tell the bad story of their life, you know, how nothing ever works, you know, and this goes back to the ABCs from Seligman about belief systems. You know, this always happens to me. So what is it? Personal, pervasive, and permanent. So, you know, bad things always happen to me. It's never going to get any better. And, you know, this, you know, it happens to me personally. And so that can be the story that's told. And then that reinforces pessimism. You know, it's the opposite of learned optimism. So learning that to be able to mine these successes, and when stuff does happen, I guess that's probably what I was doing for them yesterday, is help them not take it personally. Help them not seeing as permanent or pervasive. It's not your whole life. And one of the guys, he went from being really not, you know, what is she even bringing us? You know, he said to the owner, you know, I don't know the value of this program. Why are we spending money on it? You just, you know, laid somebody off. When we just got rid of this program, we wouldn't have that. We'd have that money. And, you know, the owner's saying, well, I think she really brings us value, and here's what some of it. But I now have to meet with this manager who's already said, I don't think she brings us any value. And at the end of it, he wanted me to see a picture of him and his buddy when they were, you know, 20 years ago, before this guy had cancer 3 times. And he was a big guy, and he just had he was having such a bad day that he went and got his bike out so he could have it for the weekend. It was in storage. And then he wanted to show me his bike. So in that moment, it was a beautiful bike. So pictures on his phone of him and his friend 20 years ago and showing me his bike pretty much left me saying, I think we've repaired this. I think, you know, and all I did was show up and listen. So I have to remember that success when I get to another situation where I feel like I don't have anything to bring to it because I can't fix it.
Yeah, or Pamela, I think often we bring the common person who we are or want to be to every situation, and that's when things go wrong sometimes. So as an example, I'm perfectionistic. I expect every situation things will go well because I'm conscientious and make sure they do. And thus when they don't, it really throws me off. So if I bring a different self, like beating and learning something I've never done, like sailing as I did, where I was just totally stupid and you have to learn all these knots. And if I don't bring the perfectionistic side, it's fun. But if I have this persona that I'm so used to for 45 years, I will not enjoy my life.
Yeah, great point. All right, let's go on to the next slide, a visual autobiography. So Seth has a number of exercises where we work with photos, and we use it to see if we can get in touch with the self that lived at that time. And one of the concepts he introduces is we're actually not a continuous self. There are parts of us that choose not to go forward in life, and they can become kind of part selves and split offs. So I was trying to reconstruct things about my family of origin and my own. I don't have a lot of memories of my childhood. I got a lot of blanks. But what I did have was every school picture that was taken from first grade until I graduated high school. And I took, poster size board, and I laid them all out chronologically. And I had another series because in our family, we took Christmas pictures. My mother liked to dress us up in costumes and have us all kind of match. So I had, at least 12 years of that. And, 12 years that, well, probably more than that, started with when there was only 2 of us and all the way until there were 6 of us. So, and then what I did is I sat with that multiple occasions, just sat with it, trying to know the little girl, to know the middle schooler, to know the pre-adolescent and adolescent. And I spent time looking into my eyes in the photo. And it was pretty profound. That, I have to say in some of my younger pictures, that self did not grow to be this self. And there's a fair amount of discontinuity. And in some ways, I think I had to pick up a thread. So somewhere around 40, I had to go back and pick up a thread of me that got lost. And I talk about my 12-year-old self, that's kind of the feisty self that I was able to go and find and bring her back up. Because in between what had stepped in was kind of a adolescent, imposter, kind of tough girl self that was my protective self. And I went from being kind of a sappy, heart on her sleeve, believe in fairies and elves kid to being hip, slick, and terminally cool as a defense. And that carried me through my teens and my 20s. And the life force that we've talked about that's so vital to me actually was connected with a 12-year-old. And when that path verged, and when I went on my vision quest, it was actually the 12-year-old that went on the vision quest. She's the one that said we could do it. At least when you start talking about that yoga training, I get that same sense of that was that part of the self that said, no, we can do this. This is what we want to do. And that's who went on my vision quest. And then that's who then created the future success. But I had to go back and find her because she, I think, got shut in a closet, just kind of split off. So, this is one of the things that we can do is use photos to do that. I just had a birthday, and we also had a lot of family birthday pictures. Thank you all for being part of that celebration. And a couple of years ago, I put up a picture of my brother, my sister, and I are all born on the same day. So we celebrated together. And what was surprising is my sister's my older half sister. some of her friends from our neighborhood growing up talked about how much fun our parties were. And on this year's birthday, one of the guys from high school said, "Oh, I remember that swimming party you had at your house." I'm not sure, 15, 16, what age it was. And I thought, wow, somebody is helping me retrieve a memory that I don't actually have. So let's talk about this subject. What do you think? What do you think about doing a autobiography with some photos?
I think that sounds like a fascinating exercise. My dad, my dad is the archivist in the family.
Yep.
He's the genealogist. He's the, he's got all the films of dance recitals and every house we ever owned. He has the first mortgage check he ever wrote. And so he will have all of my school pictures because we always had to have, we always got them. I remember complaining about how expensive they were, but we always got them.
You're worth it.
Yeah. I'll have to do that. He's got them all organized in a book. I'll just borrow the book.
Super. Great idea.
That will be interesting.
Pictures are last in the magic of typing, so I'm not there yet. And my pictures are in the basement, so I plan to do this.
Yeah.
I am thinking about, though, when I have found pictures of me being really younger, like 5, 6, 7, 12 or so, I look so happy.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I don't remember being happy. Those are like, it's just weird. So like looking at it with this bent on it, like this, where did that girl go?
Yeah.
Because, the memories that live on are, are not those good ones, are not those happy ones.
Yeah.
And so maybe trying to relive those a little bit.
Super. Yeah. That could be a real benefit.
Or maybe that's the only time the camera came out.
Isn't that wonderful? Jennifer, you got a thought?
Yeah, I was thinking in absence of pictures, or even if I have pictures, I tend to have strong feelings as memories.
Okay.
And that's also compensating for not remembering detail well. So I might do an emotional association by describing a feeling, just having a few descriptive feeling words on a card instead of pictures. Because I don't remember details, but I remember how I felt in all big situations.
So Denise was talking about the fact that every house they were in, I don't know how many places you lived as a kid, but I know you had some pretty significant geographic changes. What might be curious is to look at that as kind of the timeline.
Oh yeah, good.
Just who was the girl here and who was the girl.
That's good. I like that. That's great. Yeah.
We had, in 1956, we moved into the new house from the original house, the old house. And my brother and I talk about this because we were happier in the first house. And something bad happened when we moved into the big fancy house. My parents' marriage got very stressed and, a lot of things. My dad was starting a new business. But so the first house remains to us a happy place. And, we joke about that we should have told the new owners of our later house that they should have it exercised before they move in, that the things there were so bad. And, so that's part of the shift that I know. And that happened when I was 8. So I can look at the more carefree self that was pre-8. And it's interesting, in 8, I'm fat. That my 8-year-old picture, I look depressed and fat. If you saw this girl, you would say, she's depressed. And there aren't any other pictures where I look depressed, so it was probably that very bad year of 1956, and I wasn't able to fake it for the camera. But I'm a chubette. All right. Isn't this a sweet thought? Sending love to earlier selves. Seth says, and this is what we're talking about, the part self and who went on and all that. Seth says that even in this life, each of us has various egos. We can only accept the idea of one ego as a shorthand symbolism. So the adult woman that's sitting here that I identify with as me is only one of the multiple selves that kind of have timelines that go together. So the ego at any given time in this life is simply a part of us that surfaces a group of characteristics that the inner self uses to solve the various problems. So I'm thinking, Jennifer, what you just said about the perfectionistic self who shows up versus another self that can show up. Lisa, what I know about you is you are so wacky silly. When you get into that, yet in, you know, I know part of your self-definition is that you're really serious. But, you know, you are cracking me up silly. And Jennifer's nodding here and agreeing. So,
She knows I think that.
As a matter of fact, I would say you're so freaking cute, I can hardly stand it.
Yeah, and we love it.
Yeah. And I know that's so not of what you, yeah, we have to talk to the man in your life and say, which Lisa do you know?
Yeah, you're the cutest of cutes.
I mean, you do wacky so well. So, you know, we use these things to solve various problems, you know, and I've been asking, when did I stop being funny? You know, because one of the ways I solved problems, it was one of the things I did in my family. I was the one who broke the tension by being funny. I was the one that survived being a geek by being funny. So, you know, my clients think I'm pretty funny because I use a lot of self-effacing humor, because it keeps me from being the heavy that I'm really going to be otherwise, which is kind of inappropriate to my role there. Denise, I don't know if you think I'm funny. Maybe not. The cats think I'm funny.
Sometimes you're funny. You're getting funnier.
Yeah, I went through a tough time, you know, the stuff that happened in 2009 and 2010, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think took funny out of me.
Not
Yeah.
funny.
I was just thinking of the years that we had the studio in Rhode Island, which would be like 2004, 5, 6. Everybody knew me as being funny, you know, because they just did. And
So, Pamela, in the spirit of not beating ourselves up, I think, you know, there must be something that was more important than being funny for you, or whatever I've lost. There's something that's more important. So if I think about my truth-telling style,
yep.
I also wish I was humorous. I'm dating a humor type. I guarantee you he's a humor type.
Thank you, God.
I'm envious. I'm jealous. It's the one I wanted to be. Yet I have to tell myself something's more important, and I shouldn't beat myself up for not being the other thing.
Well, that's a great thing that you're saying. And, you know, certainly I was trying to solve a lot of problems. And, you know, life became so serious that it was kind of hard to shake the seriousness of it. You know, it was like a cloak that I was wearing that I couldn't get out from under. You know, and I quote you all the time. One of the things I tell my clients when I'm, you know, I always teach from a from a transparent, authentic way. Is the thing that I've been working with this month is don't let the 10% ruin your 90%. And it was a gift to me by a client. You know, he said one of the best lessons one of his early bosses said is don't let your 10% ruin your 90%. And, you know, everybody wants to, you know, when I say, what do you think this means? I just put up on the slide and they say, well, don't let 10% of the customers ruin the other experience of 90, or 10% of the bad apples, you know, in the team, you know, all that. I said, well, if you think about it personally, what does it mean? And then I say, you know, I have a 10% that really can destroy my 90%. I'm prickly. My nature is I'm prickly. And I got some feedback in our, you know, that leadership program I took. They all know I was in the leadership program. I said, I got some feedback. And personally, I don't really like feedback, but I got this feedback because we make them take surveys all the time and get feedback. So that's another way to kind of take the pain out of it. And I said, so somebody I really admire for her thoughtfulness told me that I really fail as a leader when I'm less playful, more irritable than playful. I mean, that one nailed me to the core and still resonates in my head. So I use that as kind of an explanation of how my prickliness can get in the way. So to the point that you're making about this ego that shows up, this perfectionist or this controlling, I was getting ready to go to a studio class a couple weeks ago, and it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I'd been working a full week, and I'm wanted to make sure that I got there. It's in Waltham. There's a lot of traffic. I don't want to be delayed. I want to get there ahead of everybody so I can carve out my space and lay out all my tools before everybody gets there and starts causing a mess and it gets all chaotic, because this is one of my favorite teachers. It's an advanced intermediate class. I really want to take it. And I'm pushing the highway. You know, I'm just in that urgent thing that makes me irritable, and it makes me not play well in the sandbox with others. You know, and I'm 69. I have feedback for a lifetime that this is what happens. So I talked myself down. And I said, you know, once again, who needs to show up for this? Who wants to show up for this? You know, Pammy, who wants to play in the sandbox, wants to show up for this. You know, who's got her favorite teacher and she's going to be playing in clay and doing something wonderful. Well, don't let the other one ruin it. And so for 3 days, periodically, I would have to have that conversation, because the next thing that happened was you were supposed to be at an intermediate level to take the class. And the last woman to arrive, who arrived late, never had worked with polymer clay before. And I did one of those things where I said, what do you mean you've never worked with it before? This said advanced class requires intermediate, all that. And she's just like, oh, well, I just, you know, and she's just very wonderful with it. And I'm like, whoa. It turns out she's right across the bench from me. God is so wonderful in my life teaching me these lessons. So we get into the first hour and she is doing fabulous work. She is doing so much better than I'm doing, so much better than everybody else is doing. She is doing beautiful, precise, fabulous work. So the class started at 10, so by noon, I figure I have to kind of have a conversation here and clean this up. And I started over lunch talking to her. Somebody said, so what do you do in your day job? She said, well, I'm an architect. She's an architect. She's a freaking architect. Architects go to art school. So here I am, you know, gearhead Pamela, taking an art class, judging the woman for not being. So that's where, once again, that ego self that shows up, that serves me well in some environments, really didn't serve well there.
Yeah. The realization I just had now about irritable, when we become irritable about things, like I hate being late, I love being prepared, it's part of my perfectionism. There's something important in the irritable.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I just realized now. So paying attention to the irritable, digging is really worth it versus trying not to be it.
Right. So asking the question of, you know, as you phrased it before, what is this part of me trying to serve?
Mm-hmm.
And how could I serve that need in a way that didn't have unintended consequences?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I don't like the package that I'm getting if I use it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts? Anything come to mind on that?
I just thought, boy, this is a lot of work.
Well, you know,
It's not easy being us.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not easy being conscious. But, you know, I look at the other choice, and there's plenty of folks around. You can look at the other choice and say, you know.
It brings such peace.
Yeah. And if I'm unconscious, I'm unlikely to have the life that I really want.
Yeah.
You know, that whole thing about having a life second to none requires that I remain conscious. And yeah, it's a full-time job. You know, and are there times I want to go offline and just binge watch This Is Us? Yeah. But then I pick up the responsibility. So it's one of those negotiated timeouts. Okay, we're going to have a timeout, but then we're going to pick up the responsibility. Because it's, as my first sponsor used to say to me all the time when I would whine about just what you were saying, Denise, this is so hard and all of that. You know, why do I have to do it? I was very much, why do I have to do it? She'd say very patiently and very firmly, because it's your life. Just like my wonderful teacher, Marion Woodman, I can hear her voice saying the same thing. So, you know, I was trying to pass off responsibility for my life to somebody else, but then I didn't like the way they handled it. So, you know, you know, thinking back, this is kind of like the photo thing, saying, you know, the me that's sitting here right now, is this the me that was 10 years ago?
Well, think about how we experience each other differently sometimes. Like you said, the two sides of Jennifer earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's lots of egos, there's the 11-year-old whatever ego, and there's the 30-year-old. So there's so many of me. I think, to understand, and this activity helped it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
just to understand the theme.
Yep.
And what's, contiguous across them, is helpful for others. Maybe it's helpful for ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
but I often think about how it's to others I feel greatest expectation of consistency. I don't feel that for myself. I can live with all the different Jennifers.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting.
Uh-huh. So when you say others, I'm wondering if that means that you use this to help them understand the different parts that are showing up.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Because if they only meet one part, this used to be a part of my problem in dating. Is, if somebody met me in one environment, they would encounter, a certain ego self, a part of Pamela.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd be like, well, who is this other one?
Right.
And, or, so very much they showed up in different places, parts of me. And I needed to understand how the story went together.
Mm-hmm.
And the more familiar I am with all these part selves or egos, the easier it is for me to introduce them to other people in a way that they can make sense out of them.
That's great to tell the story of you. Yep.
Because a lot of people don't have a both and. They get stuck in an either or.
Right.
You're either this or you're that. So you're either playful or serious.
Yep.
You're either, a geek, brainiac, or, a ditz.
Mm-hmm.
And my college fiance, he was the first to say, you really are a strange combination. Because, no doubt you're very, very bright, but you can be so ditzy.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually loved that he could see my ditziness.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was allowed in the container or the definition of who Pamela is.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what Seth talks about is multidimensionality, really learning to live with multidimensionality. And the concept is we are a multidimensional self. And we narrow what is possible by only seeing us as one self and not in that whole multidimensionality. So as we go back and we go back to those earlier selves, or even in the present, being able to say, well, who is available to show up? And I love the fact that this is how Seth was talking about it, but if we talk about things like internal family systems now, which is a system, if Leslie was here, she'd be able to talk about it, that there's a lot of inner process work that I was taught to do in the 80s about, making peace with all the part selves. And I did a lot of journal writing of them dialoguing with each other so that it became very much a known kind of configuration of self. Jungians use this as archetypes. So a lot of Jungian analysis is introducing yourself, and because the archetypes show up in our dreams. So the part selves will show up, and there are some people who say that all the characters in a dream are us. So how do I get to know those parts of myself? All right.
So wait, I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know if I'm going to articulate this very well. So the it's an either or thing. Like I get the whole irritable, I get the whole willful. I get, like irritable really comes from being willful, or maybe stepping on a value somewhere along the line. I don't quite understand where the whole black and white, right or wrong, good or bad, the dichotomy thinking actually comes from. The duality instead of the multi-dimensionality.
It's actually, and I was talking about this earlier today with clients I've been talking about all month, it's actually a way that we deal with complexity. So we as humans do binary really well. And we work with binary, and unless we have someone who helps us move beyond the binary to the complexity. And I notice a lot of people want to reduce complexity to binary. And in doing that, they take out the subtlety that's necessary for a nuanced existence. So it is reductionistic thinking. And what we're trying to do as a society is increase our tolerance for complexity. Because for many people, it triggers anxiety as they try to hold more. And that's once again about expanding the container so we can hold more dimensionality and more complexity.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes it's just dimensionality. It may actually not be complex. It's just high quantity, and I hated to use the word diversity, high differences, high number of differences.
Or sometimes I think of it just in terms of colors. You know, there's some people who are only working with primary colors. And there was a time that as a species, we only worked with primary colors. You know, that was the level of differentiation that we had established. And, you know, as we were able to build, I went to a museum that showed when these colors started coming into paintings because they learned how to build the pigments so they could add more nuanced colors. And there's a great book about colors that's called Mauve. And it's about when did we start naming colors more subtly. So, and people have different sensitivities. Like, I don't have a rich range around music. So I'm not tone deaf, but I don't have a subtle appreciation of nuance. You know, you were using a word before, Jennifer, that was really good. It's not complexity, but it's the, you know, the multiplicity. So, you know, I pretty much know, you know, do, re, mi, fa, you know, that's it. You know, I have a limited range. Color, I have very rich dimensionality. So, and I think that that's modalities that we, and it probably comes with our wiring, that we have a sensitivity. I have a pretty high touch sensitivity. So I go through the world touching things because I'm kinesthetic. So the way it feels is meaningful. And so I've spent a lifetime coming up with language. So how do you go from one modality? I know what it feels like, but if I want to articulate it to you, I have to find a word for it. I don't know that I have a wide range of taste, you know, like taste buds and sensory. You know, so I think that's right. I think that people have it. And then we need people who can help us differentiate. So, you know, if I listen to music with a musician, they will point out things to me that I would not have heard. So that's what I'm thinking about. That's, you know, another way to talk about it. Thanks for the question, Lisa. You know, it's a capacity, I think. And I think that it also requires a tolerance for ambiguity, which is another thing that for many people causes anxiety. You know, and I know at a time in my life I couldn't. I had a very low threshold for emotional ambiguity, so I would push things to be a yes decision or a no decision because I was so uncomfortable living in, you know, in the dangle in between the two.
Yeah, and how does all this like relate to blaming? And I don't really want to sidetrack us, but that's really what's just coming up for me right now.
Well, as Brené Brown says, blame is the most useless of emotions. It serves no value. It is sourced in wanting to discharge an emotion that, so it's the same thing about being able to hold the container, being able to hold the emotion. So when I do something stupid, where I break something, or I'm late for something, or you know, my thoughtlessness causes me to have a consequence, I have a really yucky feeling. You know, that feeling is kind of blame and, you know, self-loathing or whatever those things are that make that yucky feeling. And I'd love to vomit that feeling out. And the best way for me to vomit that feeling out is with blame. I don't know if you've heard the wonderful animated version of her talking about blaming her husband for the coffee cup. search for it under Brene Brown on YouTube. It will nail it so perfectly, Lisa. It's just so, and I so identified with that sequence. You know, and it's something that I send around to my clients because, you know, everybody hears it and just goes, oh, that is so true. So, wanting to blame, to discharge an emotion that we find intolerable to hold on to. Thank you, Allison. Allison says the animated spot of Brene Brown is hilarious. We have a text window. So it is. It's hilarious, especially that the little, it's done kind of like, I'm thinking there's another one with Pooh that they take Brene and they use the Pooh character. So it's her voice track and it's just great. Other thoughts? All right. Okay, I got to get my screen live again. I know we have another slide. All right, belief assignment. So we had, this is our second belief assignment on the body. So this is certainly an area that I'm working in right now. I'm really working around the beliefs that I'm holding on my body. So physical existence is valuable for so many reasons, one being that the flesh is so responsive to thought and resilience. I am somebody who somaticizes. I have known this, you know, I first started reading these books in the early 70s, and it helped me understand that the Jungians say symptom or symbol or symptom. I just heard Marion say it again in the tape I'm listening to. You know, we either can bring something to consciousness and deal with it symbolically, or maybe in our dream or our active imagination, or we will have it as a symptom in the body. And I am a world-class somaticizer. So there are built-in guidelines, so the body consciousness itself, while mirroring your negative images at time, will also struggle against them, because the body actually, in its own well-being, wants to be well. That's its consciousness, you know, that's its divinity. You must remember that you dwell always in a natural framework. That means your thoughts themselves are natural, say as a lock of your hair. In what may seem like an odd analogy, I will compare your thoughts to viruses, for they are alive, always present, responsive, and possess their own kind of mobility. Ain't that the truth? Physically speaking, thoughts are chemically propelled. They travel through the universal body as viruses travel through your temporal form. Thoughts interact with the body and become part of it as viruses do. So, whoever you're smiling at, you must really like Jennifer. She's got that look in her eye.
It's my boyfriend.
Yeah, you got that look in your eye. He just got to know that it says sweetie. It just says sweetie all over it. So, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Can you say more, Lisa?
Oh, I can. What you call it? I have a book. It's called Molecules of Emotion.
Oh, I know that book.
Hurt.
Yep.
And she found that, I will call it, you know, we have like 3 brains, body, mind, or mind, heart, mind, gut, brain as well. But they've found that that there's basically the molecules that produce, you know, the dopamine, the serotonin, the whole pharmacy that's in your head. They thought that there were receptors actually in the body, but it turns out your body actually makes those emotions as well. So your body, like, there's emotions that actually come out in your body in terms of, you know, the chemicals. So I look at your mind as your brain and your body totally. This is like, from a yoga perspective, if somebody's really, really tight and you start to loosen them up, emotions will come out. A lot of times in twists, people will just, you know, burst into uncontrollable crying because these emotions, you know, live so deep actually in their body.
It's in the tissue.
Yeah, and everything has an energetic effect. You know, the food that you eat has an energetic effect. You know, and this gets into like Ayurvedic medicine or whatever. But the thoughts you have also have an energetic effect. So if you're irritable, what do you think that energetic effect is? It's kind of like fire. It's gonna like, you know, raise temperatures or whatnot. Or this is when people like who are consistently under stress, they're, you know, heartburn or whatnot, and then that's associated with, you know, fire and pitta. So I'll say, yeah, it's like a virus.
Yeah. So I did a lot of breath work in the 90s as part of my own healing. And breath work is a very intense process that is physical and deep breathing. And it's done to music. It's 2 hours long. It's an intense trance. It's an awesome trance, you know, better than drugs. But a lot of the work we do is with the body. And, you know, some of it can be rebirthing. Some of it can be physical trauma. And, you know, people are releasing the whole time. And one of the things, I went through certification, got trained. One of the things we do is we hold people in certain ways so that they can work against, you know, have some resistance and work against it so that they can release. And just the sobbing, the laughing, and I have to say, most of the time at the end, the feeling of bliss is exquisite. You know, and it's the bliss that comes after a total release. You know, that everything that was holding back the bliss is all that irritability and tension and stress that's in the body, or pain that was not released at the time that it happened. So part of the systemic understanding around breath work is many of us have buried trauma alive. So we may understand it in the head, but to Lisa's point, the rest of the brains still have it locked in, and it's locked in at a cellular level. And I'm pretty sure the reason that I am healthier than would have happened is because in those 10 years, I did a lot of breath work. I was also doing Ericksonian hypnosis, and that's the same period of time that I got diagnosed with cervical cancer. And, you know, I had enough of this training that we're talking about here to know that, yes, I could have the medical procedures done, but if I didn't work on it on the other levels that was manifesting it, I was going to go down the road they're telling me. And they're pretty much saying, well, you know, we're going to do this procedure, and then that doesn't work. We're going to do a hysterectomy, and we're going to take your ovaries out. We're going to start doing all this. And because I'd been reading sets for so many years, I knew that that was a choice. You know, I was either going to give up body parts or I was going to start dealing with it. So right after my surgery, I went to a week-long Ericksonian hypnosis training. I think it was the 3rd year I'd gone to it, and I really loved the work this guy did. And I basically did it so I could be in trance for a week. And at first, I was not sure they were medically going to clear me to go, but then they did. And so I got there, was at Omega, which I absolutely love Omega. And I'm sitting in the morning session of the first day, and we make it through the morning exercises. And we're just sitting in the last, you know, sitting in a yoga position, facing our partner and doing an exercise. And I start hemorrhaging. And by the time they got me in a paramedic to go to a hospital, I was covered in blood from my ankles to my armpits. And what was powerful was that I got in touch with what I want to say, millennia of women. Because what I realized was this is how women die in childbirth, is I was bleeding out and they couldn't stop the hemorrhaging. And that whole sense of powerlessness of all my life force just pouring out of me and volumes of blood and clots and everything. So they got me to the, they took me in a pickup truck to the, it's rural there, to the regional medical hospital, and I sat there, and I had 2 women come with me, which was really bold for me to ask people to come with me. And it was probably 5 hours before I was treated. And there I was, just lying there with all this blood over me, dried, and you know, Judith and Deborah were trying to keep me calm. And I knew I was on the edge of hysteria, and I could just feel it. And as soon as the doctor started to work on me, I went into full trauma flashback. And what I was reliving was abortions I had had. I'm so happy this is a women's forum. That back in the day, when we as women got the right to do that in the early 70s, we believed it was a simple medical procedure. And it had left layer after layer of emotional trauma. And I knew in that moment that I was being offered a choice. So, here's this guy trying to fix me, and I'm in total freak out. But because I have the two women from the class with me, I'm able to say, I'm in a flashback. This is deep work I need to do. Just tell them to keep working, and I'll be fine. And then I knew I had to get back to the rest of the week, because I couldn't complete the healing unless I got back to the rest of the week. Because I was trying to do this work about all the layers that were tied into this that I needed to clear out. And I knew I needed a container and a context and a process to do it. And the last day of that week-long retreat, I had the most profound healing I have had in my whole life. It was a healing of what I call the mother wound. And it was a healing with the divine feminine presence. And it was huge. And I pretty much believe, had that not all happened, I would have gone down a different road medically. So I'm grateful that I had been introduced to this as a belief system. So I was able to seek out the experiences and continue to follow on them. So that's my story about this. Lisa told her story. Anybody else have stuff? Don't leave me hanging naked, please. Somebody say something. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, I think what I did all of these exercises separately, and yet when I combine them, I can put some stories together. So like the earlier chapter, one of the most memorable experiences, views on the body, how I got influenced on how things should operate, chapter 22, we're not there yet. When I put it all together, I did have a realization about care that I just feel I deserved. There was a point when I was 11 years old and my mother let me go 4 months with pneumonia, but because she didn't believe in going to doctors. And I literally, was coughing up lungs and like stuff was coming out of the windows in the car. I can't believe she didn't take me. So we're about to go to Sri Lanka a week before, and I go to ER, ICU, with a totally filled left lung. And then I couldn't go to Sri Lanka for at least a month. So I had to stay in for a week. So I was putting that as one of my big experiences. And then I think about my own health, experience in the last couple of years and how I got to care for myself all by myself almost.
Mm-hmm.
So in the comforting your former self chapter, I thought, well, that's, I do coddle myself as an adult when I'm ill. I'm thinking about how I think about the body and treat others versus myself. And I am sympathetic towards others that are ill. So there's congruence in my view of illness, sympathy. But so that's a realization I had that, if I sort of flip my recent experience on another side, I got to care for myself in a way that didn't get done when I was little.
Yeah. That's pretty profound. That's pretty profound. That's what we talk about is the corrective emotional experience.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we provide a corrective emotional experience for that earlier self so that what can now reside in the memory body is a different experience? Back to Lisa's point that at a cellular level, we start giving something that can reside in the body as a memory of this is what it's like to be well cared for.
Did I give myself the illness so I could care for myself?
Well, that's a conversation you should continue to have in your journal. I don't ever want to step on somebody's belief, but, I needed to work out my wounded feminine if I was going to move on and be whole, because there were a lot of ways in which, I had a mother who couldn't mother. She had a mother who couldn't mother. After that, I did a whole big thing in a sweat lodge where I realized that I come from generations of women who are just trying to survive, and they never could even experience their life because they were just desperate about trying to survive. And I was able to have compassion for them that I never had. But I came out of a sweat lodge where I struggled the whole time trying to breathe. And I almost missed the whole ritual because I just needed to breathe and I couldn't breathe. And I had so much anxiety about being in there naked with everybody and all that other body stuff that I had figured out how to be the first in so I could be the first out. And they said, you can leave if it gets to be too much. But, that stubborn part of me that didn't, don't want to leave until the miracle happens, don't want to miss out on any of this, and just trying, but I can barely breathe. And I got out of the sweat lodge and I threw myself naked in the dirt. And this is in, 9,000 feet in Colorado, flat out on the dirt. And I just said, take me. Because I realized that, like my mother and my grandmother and probably my great-grandmother, I was living desperately, that I wasn't even able to breathe. That metaphor for my life was I couldn't experience what was going on because I was just trying to stay alive. I was just trying to get a breath. And, my moment of truth was to say, if that's all I can have, take me now. I'm done with living this way. I think at that point, sometimes that's what we're brought to, is that point that we can make a decision. Is, I want to choose to live life differently. I don't want to live this desperate. And, I'm in another form of that right now, is I'm trying to choose how to live as an elder differently than the trajectory I was on. So, yeah. So maybe this is the wonderful story that you taught yourself. It's a great teaching tale. It looks like it has a happy ending. Denise, you got any thoughts there you want to share before we go to I think we got one left, or was this the last one? This is it?
I got nothing.
Okay, nothing. You got nothing?
Well, I got nothing. I'm ready to share.
Okay.
I'm processing.
You're processing. Thank you. Yeah. How about this one? Denise, you said you really like this one about sexual identification. If we are multidimensional selves, I thought you said you like this one. Page 15, you did. The psyche not only has no one sexual identification, but it is the larger psychic and psychological bank of all potential from which gradations of sexuality emerge. It is not asexual, yet it is a combination of those richest ingredients considered to be male and female. The human personality is therefore endowed sexually and psychologically with a freedom from strict sexual organization. This has contributed to the survival of species by not separating any of its into mental or psychological abilities into two opposite camps. Except for the physical processes of reproduction, the species is free to arrange its psychological characteristics in whatever fashion it chooses. And I, for one, am so grateful for that freedom. Particularly at the time that we live, we probably have that freedom more than ever, is that we are not gender typed by, sex and limited to that. And, if we go back 100 years, it's not been so long, and there's still parts of the world where it is not true. So part of the whole thought here is that we actually, as the multiple selves that we are and the reincarnational selves that we are, have lived all, forms of this. A more recent Seth book that I was reading says, we're not done with incarnation until we've been both the child, the parent, and there's three in it, so I'm missing one. But it says, we really have to live at all levels of experience, male and female, so we have to do all that.
Yeah, so something I examined about my beliefs in this segment was that I do see androgyny as superior. I always have. And I believe that pure femininity and pure masculinity is inferior. I'm not saying that's right. Mm-hmm. It's a belief I have. And so as I thought about the roles my parents played and how I am, I think I don't give pure feminine people or pure masculine people probably enough credit,
Okay.
being
From,
androgynous as I am.
yeah. From a Jungian perspective, we have the anima and the animus that are two of the structures within our psyche, and being able to access both of them, men being able to access both and women being able to access both, gives us the full range of experience.
Mm-hmm.
I had a teacher that when I was out in Arizona in this intentional community, who one of the ways that we related is how we had known each other when we knew each other in a past life was as two men. And even though, he was somebody who was pretty seductive and got sexually involved with anyone, that energy was never between us, because we were basically two comrades. And that was the dimensionality of the relationship. I love that even in the world now, we're beginning to understand that as we look at gender characteristics as two bell-shaped curves, and we allow them to overlap. And so things that might have been identified with male behavior, can be part of female behavior, and things that were identified. My brother, after the election, when Trump won, he and I were talking about it. He had the strangest take on why that happened. He said he wrestled with it for weeks after it, and he finally came up with it was about gender. Now, I don't know that I think the same thing, but what his perspective and he said he was stunned. And this is my brother that's like my twin, we're a year apart to the day. He said because he was stunned at how rigid gender lines still are. Because he's somebody who's very androgynous, and actually it's been hard for his wife. She'll tell a great story about how she has had to accommodate to him being so good at things that are traditionally female. So he does most of the cooking, most of the baking. He does all the interior decorating, makes the slip covers, does all those things. And he's 6'11". And he is, a physical specimen, of a masculinity. And I've always referred to him as my engineer poet brother, because he, has this deep sensitivity. He knows the moment both of his children were conceived. Mm-hmm. He was that present, in this exquisite moment in their intimacy. So, and because he and I were we grew up as twins, we were the mirror opposite, reflection of each other. So I think that contributed to both of us being androgynous. Because my number one relationship that I used to compare with in my life was my brother. So we would have all these conversations about, what do you think about this? And do you ever feel this way? And so we didn't identify it with specific gender. Mm-hmm. Other thoughts around this orientation? Lisa, what's cooking?
Did you ask me a question?
Yeah. I said, what's cooking? What's cooking with you on this?
Oh, just I've liked the conversation. I don't think I have much more to add. Okay. I think we're all male, female, some more than others. And just like anything, I think moderation and balance is probably the most happy. And I'm trying to, think about what your brother said. It was a gender alliance. Yeah. And I don't know. Like, Trump did get a lot of women, My
dad's really angry about that. My dad just took me on the other day and said, well, you need to talk to women because it's you women that elected him. I'm like, whoa. Seriously. Yeah.
And maybe they believe in traditional roles, these women. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I still think it's a lot of wishful thinking, that wanting to believe in the fantasy that there is, we as Americans really want to have a hero, and we want to really have, it's that infantile desire to, have a strong leader so we don't have to step up. And, yeah. And so he much like Reagan did, You know, Reagan did. I used to say about that election that, you know, it's gotten so bad. We so desperately want a leader that we could see as a hero that we got a Hollywood actor, you know, who could play the role. I mean, you know, maybe he's better than John Wayne, but, you know, really that's what it was. And he had good lines, and whoever was giving him the script did a great job, you know, in many ways. I think it was probably his wife. But, yeah. All right, well, we are at 9 o'clock, I believe, 9:02. Thank you for such a rich, this is the last slide, right? I think it's the last slide. Oh, yeah, that's the next to last. So the last part is, I think we've really been talking about it, is we're multidimensional, you know, you know, this is part of the road not taken. So going back and finding particular talents that you didn't fully develop, that you can fully develop. And I think it's great for those of us at midlife are trying to say, you know, who do I want to be, and, you know, what else might I be able to access? That, you know, having been very identified with a certain set of talents, for me, it was about being a brain and being analytical and all those other things. So when I was able to start accessing more of the artistic part of me, you know, I remember using this teaching to say, well, wait a minute, you know, there are things that I've been doing that have held this piece. So yeah. Denise, you got a thought?
None.
Okay. You were unmuted and I thought maybe you had a thought you wanted to say. Yeah, so we will continue with our studies here. Thank you so much for, you know, richly participating in a deep dive into how we can live this in our lives.
Thank you, Pamela.
You know, thank
Jennifer
you
and
for
Lisa, it was really nice to connect with you.
Same here, Denise.
Nice to connect with you too, Denise.
Yeah, yeah. And Allison had to sign off, so she did. There's a text. She said, "Thank you, Pamela. Everyone, great call. Thanks for letting me just be tonight. Got to go jump off now. Bye." Thank you, Allison, for showing up. All right. Well, I am going to say blessings to you all. Much love and blessings, and look forward to sharing the journey with you again as we go. Thank you for being my fellow companions on the path. Doing this path without companions really is not the fun way to go.
Oh, thank you for holding the torch.
Okay. Well, I just basically hold the space, and we all show up. So that's it.
Thank you.
And,
Bye.
bye.
Goodbye.
Let me stop share. Now I have to get it off.
Bye, Pamela.
Bye.